Hi, it's Gloria Donahue back again with Nana's Cookery. Welcome back to my kitchen. I've been around cooking all this time, but you know what happened? My producer got his degree and went to work full time for the family business. The younger grandson went off to be a freshman at college. And my granddaughter just got home from Vanderbilt. So they're all with me again, which makes it really nice, and we're ready to do some filming. The first thing I'm going to do today is for my granddaughter's birthday, which was yesterday, and she said she would like a fruit pie. So it's Eva Marie Saint, who is a very well-known actress. It's called Her Apple Pie, a recipe that she gave to a magazine. It's different from what I usually make because it doesn't use my pie crust. It uses a cookie crust, which means there's sugar in it. And there's also butter. I'm going to read you the ingredients right now, and then we're going to make it. The crust is a cup of flour, 1/2 cup or 1 stick of unsalted butter. So that would be 4 ounces of sweet butter, and 1 cup of regular sugar. The inside's going to be the apples, and the apples are 1.5 pounds of Granny Smith apples. They're going to be pared and cored and sliced very thinly. And then they're going to be put in acidulated water. And that is 1 cup of water, 1 cup of cold water, and 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. And the reason for that is when you cut apples, just like when you cut bananas, if you don't put something in there with a little acid, they're going to turn brown. And so that's what you do. I've already done some. In my case, it took 3 apples, made 1.5 pounds. So I would go by the weight rather than by the number of the apple. And I'm going to pair this last one. It's a nice little pair, I think, does a pretty good job. The apron I'm wearing is interesting. I bought this apron 5 days ago in Chianti in Italy. And there's a legend of this black rooster. And that's the symbol of Chianti. And it seems the legend goes that Florence and Pisa were disagreeing over boundaries. And so they decided that on a given day, 2 knights would each leave from their city when the cock crowed. And where they met, they would go towards each other, and where they met would be the boundary of Chianti. Well, the white rooster was fed very well by the Pisa people. Apparently, my computer tells me that the Florentines did not feed the rooster. This was a hungry black rooster. So what happened is he woke up before sunrise because he was so hungry. So the man from Florence got a head start, and he got farther. And supposedly that is how the boundaries came to be. It may only be a legend, but it sounds like fun. We had a wonderful trip in Italy and France. And as some of you know from my grandson posting, there was an airstrike by the Air France controllers the day we were to come home. And so I want to give a big thank you to Grand Circle, the tour group we went with, and our tour guide, Federica, because they handled all the rescheduling of our having to take completely different flights to get home. And we got home on the very same day that we were supposed to. Now you see, I'm just going to slice these very thinly. Remember we talked about a chef's knife that you cut down, but you also have a slight forward motion, or it may not separate at the very bottom. And make sure, like I don't think I got quite all that core out, and you want to do that when you check your apples. I'm going across the short side rather than the long side because when it piles up, I think it's a little easier if the pieces are cut that way. We're almost done here, and then that's going to sit for 10 minutes while we make the crust. Now, the original recipe calls for cutting in flour into soft butter and then adding the sugar. I don't do that. I do it like I make everything where I cut in, and that is I use my processor. It's so much faster, and I do it with cold butter because that way it tends to remain separate, and that's kind of what you want to do. You want to make crumbs. And when we put this in, it's a buttered 9-inch pie plate that we're going to put it in, and we're going to cook it at 350. So I'm going to get these apples in there. They're really kind of flying as I'm slicing them, aren't they? And then we're going to make the crust. There we go. Now, every once in a while, stir the apples in the acidulated water to make sure that they all get a little covering of it. There we go. We'll get this stuff out of the way. One of the things that I've mentioned to a lot of people who send me comments in, if you pick up as you go along, you find it just seems to go better because you don't seem to get overwhelmed by all the mess that's around you. So if you can do something a little earlier in the day, if you can do something and then just clean up, it won't seem to be so overwhelming, especially if you're making a number of things for company. Now what I did here is I cut through the butter both ways, and now I'm just cutting across to make it like a little dice so that it will cut in better. And I'm going to put in both the sugar, the cup of sugar, the cup of flour, in my regular bowl with a regular knife, and I'm going to put that on so that they mix together. Then I'm going to take out the thing, and I'm going to put in not a whole lot at one time. Well, I can put in more than that, but sort of distribute it around. And I'll do it in a couple of different things, and you'll see what happens. I'm going to get a nice crumb. The processor is so good for so many things, and this is one of them. Whenever you have to cut shortening or butter into flour and sugar, I think it really does a good job, and it's certainly quicker than doing it with a pastry cutter or with forks. But however you do it, that works for you. Obviously, we all make little changes that we think work better for us. And now I'm just going to let her rip. We've done the crumbs. I've taken them out of the processor. They're in the bowl. You can see it's very crumbly. Now I'm going to take a cup and a half, and I happen to have a measuring cup that is that size. But I'm going to measure out a cup and a half, and then I'm going to put it in my pie plate. And then I'm going to just work it around, move and press it to make a cookie crust. So you bring it up fairly high because your apples are going to go in there, and you really don't want that the juice of the apples to start going behind that crust. I'm bringing it up all around. Now I'm going to flatten it on the bottom. You want to make sure there's no holes in this because obviously as apples cook, they will start to get juicy, and if there's an open space in that crust, they're going to find their way under it. And by buttering the crust, it should be easier to cut it away from the plate when it's ready to be served. So we're just going to press that up and press this over and make sure we have no holes. Okay, put that crust up a little higher, I think. Now I'm going to put the apples in a colander to drain them of that water, because I don't really want to have any water in the pie, just the apples. Now I'm just going to put them in the shell, and what you'll see is that there's going to be a lot of apples there. But those of you who already cook apple pies know that they really come down as they cook. So you would not want to make a pie that was just level, because then when it's cooked, it's really going to be too shallow. So we're just going to pile these up. And then before we put that crust, we're going to put on 2 teaspoons of regular cinnamon. And that sounds like a lot. And now there's no sugar. If you'll notice, this is just apples. There's no sugar in here. It's just apples. You'd be surprised because of the sweet crust and everything. It'll be plenty sweet enough. But you see, it's mounded up there a little bit. I have my cinnamon, and you don't even have to mix it in. You just pour it over the top. And I've never had it not work out fine. So we're just going to pour that. This is really easy. I mean, it's a really easy pie, but it's really good. And then we're just going to put the crumbs over it. Not going to press them down or anything. We're just going to go over there. And you may have to do a little scrunching with your fingers if you feel some of the crumbs are bigger than you want. That's fine. And we're going to put this in a 350 oven, and it'll probably be about an hour. Now it's going to look done because the crumbs are going to kind of brown, but also with an apple pie, I always take a little sharp knife and put it down through the pie, because if those apples aren't done, then your pie isn't done. You could always put some foil on the top if you think it's already gotten brown enough, and then there it is. It's ready to go in the oven, and we'll see you when it comes out. Hi, here's the pie out of the oven. It's done. You can see the crust is brown. I put a little knife through to make sure that the apples were done. Now we're going to put this aside on a rack, and we're going to let it cool for at least an hour. And then we'll have it for dinner, and we will show you the piece of pie when it's cut. Thanks. Bye-bye.